October 7th was an Israeli setup. Everyone
So are you saying Benjamin Netanyahu deliberately boosted Hamas to try to prevent a Palestinian state?
Yeah, sure. He deliberately and systematically even told on record, whoever wants to avoid the threat of a two-state solution has to support my policy of paying protection money to the Hamas.
So what we did, with the permission of our Prime Minister, is to let Qatar to transfer a huge amount of money in cash, probably more than $1.4 billion. By doing it, we increase the power of Hamas.
But I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand-down order? Was there a stand-down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is.
הייתי לוחם במחלקת מרגמות, בגדוד 13, גולני. פתאום עולה בקשר בהודעה מוזרה. כל התחנות, לא יודע למה, לא יודע איך, משהו בסגנון הזה, אין סיור בגדר עד 9 בבוקר. באיזה זה? 5:20.
The Israelis have already de facto annexed Gaza and de facto annexed the West Bank. Their principal goal now is to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians out of those two areas. The idea of ethnically cleansing Greater Israel has been wired into Zionism from the very beginning.
Legendary political scientist John Mearsheimer, the man who co-wrote the book, The Israel Lobby, unfortunately does not believe that the ceasefire in Gaza will hold. And honestly, with some of the latest developments, he has good reason to believe that the ceasefire will not hold, as both sides have already begun to accuse each other of violating the deal. Now, I want to be very precise with our rhetoric and our language when we cover this story. I made a few mistakes yesterday in referring to this as a peace deal. The fact of the matter is there hasn't been a peace deal, I want to say yet, but when it comes to a peace deal, honestly, I don't know if we're ever even going to reach that. So what we're really discussing here is a ceasefire, and the question is whether it's going to hold. Now, unfortunately, there have been more Palestinian deaths in the Gaza Strip at the hands of the IDF. The IDF has, admitted to carrying out some of these acts of violence. So as of this morning, the Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza says that 44 people have been killed and 29 injured in the past 24 hours as a result of Israeli attacks, taking the death toll to 67,913. And according to The Independent, seven Palestinians have been killed after Israeli forces opened fire on suspects. They say approached soldiers near an agreed upon ceasefire line in northern Gaza. So look, we have no way of confirming that. And if I had to bet money on it, I would not in any way trust what the IDF has to say. I also wouldn't just trust what Hamas has to say. But the idea that you shouldn't kill 7 people simply because they're approaching you. Remember, Palestinians are unarmed. Why is that the first response? To just shoot and kill 7 people right there on the spot, but they have confessed to that. Now, an Israeli drone strike also killed 5 people as they returned to check on their homes in Gaza's eastern Shijaya neighborhood, according to authorities. A separate strike killed 1 person and injured another near Khan Yunis. Now, if you guys can remember from our coverage yesterday, I talked a little bit about how Israel agreed that they would no longer carry out during the ceasefire any offensive military operations, that they would only carry out defensive military operations. And so the argument that they're going to make moving forward is every Palestinian that the IDF kills posed a threat. They did what they did because they were just defending themselves. But I also want to remind you all that they're still not allowing international journalists into the Gaza Strip where maybe some investigative reporting can confirm which side is telling the truth, which side is lying. And it's a terrible situation. Now, on top of that, there's the issue of the deceased hostages and the fact that Hamas has not returned all of the remains of the deceased hostages. So look, prior to the ceasefire, Hamas was in possession of the remains of 26 deceased hostages. So far, say that again, Cenk?
I think it's 28, Anna.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I'm sorry. The Guardian said 26 today, but okay, that's fine. So, all right, let's go with 28. It doesn't matter. They haven't released the remains of every deceased hostage, and that has upset the Palestinians. But there's nuance in this part of the story that I want to talk a little bit about. Now, they've returned the remains of 4 of the deceased hostages. There are reports that they are planning on returning 4 more deceased hostages later tonight. So we'll wait and see if that happens. However, it's really, really important to keep in mind that if you look at the ceasefire deal that was signed by the 2 parties, right? This is the first stage of the ceasefire. There was an agreement that, look, it's going to be difficult to locate the remains of all of these deceased hostages. Some of them are buried under the rubble, for instance. And so as part of this deal in writing, it was agreed upon that, Hamas might need a little more extra time to do what they are agreeing to do in returning all of the hostages, including the remains of the deceased. Families of deceased hostages, though, who are supposed to be returned to Israel as part of President Trump's 2030 28-point plan for peace, said that they were angered that only 4, and you're right, Cenk, 4 of the 28 bodies had been returned. And the Hostages Families Forum, which is an advocacy group for the hostages and the hostage families, of course, called the failure to hand over all the bodies a violation of the agreement and called for the immediate suspension of all agreement implementation until all the remaining bodies are returned to Israel. Now, that's pretty disastrous, but I think that's the first piece of evidence we can point to when we say that the protests about ending the war wasn't really about the plight of the Palestinian people. It was really about releasing all the hostages. What happens to the Palestinians, I don't think, the hostage families really care too much about, but whatever. Putting that aside, a spokesperson for the forum later said that it wasn't calling for a return to fighting, but for Hamas to be held accountable to meet its obligations as part of the agreement. But they are so far meeting the obligations as part of their agreement. As Jeremy Scahill reports, during Gaza negotiations, Israel understood it would take time to recover all bodies of deceased captives. A specific mechanism for recovering the bodies was agreed. Now Israel is pretending that didn't happen so it can violate the deal and cut the agreed aid shipments in half. And in fact, that is what is happening. Israel had initially agreed to allow 600 aid trucks into the Gaza Strip. Now they're saying, okay, well, since Hamas allegedly hasn't fulfilled its promise, which again, they are trying to find the remains of the hostages, and they are actually following through with the agreement based on what's in writing. We're going to go ahead and do collective punishment and severely limit the aid that enters the Gaza Strip. And so that's what we're dealing with now. Red Cross spokesperson Christian Cardone told reporters in Geneva that not all entry points are open to get humanitarian aid inside Gaza. And that's the main issue right now. And that's what humanitarians, including the ICRC, have been calling for in the last hours, is making sure that because of the huge needs, all entry points can be open. We are still witnessing only a few trucks coming in and large crowds approaching these trucks in a way that does absolutely not conform to humanitarian standards. And the coordinator of government activities in the territories, COGAT, the Israeli military body overseeing aid flows, said the restrictions were being imposed because, quote, Hamas violated the agreement. Again, they didn't. You can read the agreement yourselves. Regarding the release of the bodies of the hostages, no fuel or gas will be permitted except for specific humanitarian infrastructure needs, the note added. And if you guys can also remember, Cenk, yesterday we were talking about how as soon as the bombing stopped, Palestinians started looking for the remains of their family members under the rubble, but it's really hard to do it because they don't have the heavy machinery necessary to get through, heavy rubble. And so they're using pickaxes. They're making do with what they have. They're using their bare hands. But if in fact you have the remains of hostages buried under the rubble, I mean, Israel can help by allowing the heavy machinery into the territory so they can, get through the rubble and find the remains of, yes, the Israeli hostages, but also innocent Palestinians who have been trapped under the rubble for who knows how long.
Yeah. So it's funny you were saying that right as one of our members wrote in Peace for Peace said, we won't provide you with equipment to remove the rubble, but you broke the peace deal by not giving us hostages buried under the rubble. Well, how are we supposed to get them? Right? So that's a great point by one of our members. Embedded Dude, another member on TYT.com, said, one dead Israeli hostage is worth 10,000 Palestinian people. When it comes to American media, I think that is literally true. We're going to talk about that in a second. And last member, and we do the show together with our members, so sign up now if you can, hit the join button below, etc. Wang Jun said, Israel violating the ceasefire is the biggest we told you so since the last time Israel violated a ceasefire. So now, let me break it down a little bit further. So there was 20 hostages that remained alive, 28 that were dead, right? So they returned the 20 that are alive. That's the most important thing, and I'm thrilled that those guys are back. We covered on the show yesterday, the moms, dads, girlfriends, wives in, tears, and it's super understandable, and thank God they're back. The dead are important to their family members. I understand that. So had 28 left. They returned 4 initially. They're returning 4 tonight. So there's 20 left that are dead. But Hamas had already explained to Israel and the other people involved in the peace negotiations that they don't necessarily have them and they need to find them. In fact, I'm going to add on to what Anna said with a part I found from the Wall Street Journal. But you have to understand something, and this is important. These pieces of information are buried in mainstream media articles like the deceased are buried under the rubble in Gaza. So I read half a dozen articles before I finally found this information on the 5th page of a Wall Street Journal article. Okay? So they say, quote, Hamas had communicated to mediators that it didn't know where all the bodies were, and the two sides agreed to set up an international task force to search for the remaining bodies. So Hamas has definitively not broken the deal. Now, did you see that on cable news? Did you see that as a headline anywhere? No. What I have read and seen all over mainstream media is Hamas breaks the deal. They had it coming. Hamas breaks the deal. Hamas breaks it. You're lying. You're literally lying. Or you're ignorant buffoons who are actors reading a script that your producer wrote for you, and your producer is lying. You ignorant buffoons. This is important. Get it right for the first time in your lives. But nope, they're all going to lie on behalf of Israel. And then when we say, hey, it looks like you're working for Israel, they're like, how dare you, you anti-Semite? Of course we're going to lie on behalf of Israel. Well, then you're not news. And by the way, I'd say go to Israel, but Israel has way better press than we have here. Israeli press holds the Israeli government accountable way more than American press does. So now we get to how Israel is violating the deal. So look, guys, I thought it was 53% because that's what I was reading in the past. Now they're clarifying, no. Israel currently occupies 58% of Gaza. So they already stole more than half of Gaza. They're never going to give it back. They're never going to withdraw. Everyone who isn't stupid knows that, or ignorant, right? Well, to be fair, most are in the ignorant category. And if you're accidentally ignorant because you watch cable news or you read the New York Times, I don't blame you, right? They're just purposely lying to you over and over and over again on behalf of their beloved Israel. So they already stole all that land. And if I'm wrong and they withdraw completely, oh my God, of course I'll come out and tell you. You know why? Because I'm in the news business where we actually report things, whether it's favorable or unfavorable to our point of view. Unlike the mainstream media who hide facts from you. All right, so in this case, they say the 5 unarmed Palestinians approached the yellow line. So you have begun to approach the area of Gaza we stole from you earlier by murdering your family members. That's it. Kill them all. Because we told you they were never going to stop killing. And because the American government keeps writing them checks. Oh, you murdered more Palestinians. You violated Trump's ceasefire. Who cares? Write them another check. Write them another check. And American media, oh, Israel, the Palestinian dirty savages, right? I'm so sick of our disgustingly racist media that it constantly smearing Palestinians. And of course, Israel cut all the aid in half, as Anna told you. So they're back to murdering. They're back to starving. Day one. We told you this government of Israel is a terrorist government. They're never going to stop murdering the Palestinians. They're never going to stop stealing their land and trying to create greater Israel. And they say it. They say they want greater Israel, and that includes Gaza as the West Bank. The only reason why that's not crystal clear to everyone in America is because the American media absolutely refuses to tell you what the Israeli government officials actually say. Like, for example, did you read everywhere? Did you see on cable news that Netanyahu said in Hebrew, as we reported yesterday, oh, the campaign's not over. He has no intention of listening to Trump's peace plan. None, zero. He said it. He said he's on a spiritual and historical mission to capture greater Israel, which includes Gaza and the West Bank. But the American media will lie on behalf of Netanyahu 2,000 times over and do their stupid propaganda as they go back to their genocide immediately. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live show.
Bibi would call me so many times, can you get me this weapon, that weapon, that weapon? Some of them I never heard of, Bibi, and I made them. We have weapons that nobody's ever dreamt of, and we've given a lot to Israel, frankly, but you used them well. It also takes people that know how to use them, and you obviously used them very well.
So after Donald Trump's own acknowledgement of the United States' involvement in committing mass genocide alongside with Israel, what does Donald Trump do next?
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. Come on. By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
They try to celebrate even more by trying to say, hey, why don't you give that guy a pardon? Jesus fucking Christ.
الوضع الآن في مستشفى الشفاء. انبضح انبضح. المستشفى شباب.
أخذنا حاجة وحطينا أغراضنا برا بعد شوي ولا مطاب وقصف في المدرسة ما أخذنا أسلحة إلا وعينا هي أواعينا قاعدين في خيمة مش ملاقيها داخل أولادي لا بنسي ولا حرام ولا مخدة ولا شيء أنا في الشارع أنا أولادي وين أروح
منزل يعود لعائلتي الحقيقية مش عارف.
You live on stolen land, you drink stolen water, you eat stolen fruit. I find you fascinating, Mr. Dayan, I really do. I can't understand how you have such self-assurance. A man who was born in Argentina, whose family comes from the Ukraine, and is actually wanting people, sensible people, to believe that he has some connection with my country. You and your fellow settlers, nothing other than common thieves.
An Israeli tank ran over a pregnant Palestinian woman back and forth until the fetus came out of her body. Do I need to repeat this again for you? Do you think I enjoy telling this story? Hell no. But do you need to hear it? Absolutely. Why? Because I'd like you to tell me how this act of pure evil is Israel defending itself. How this act of pure evil is targeting or thwarting Hamas. Imagine being a father that witnesses this happen to your wife and unborn child. Would you as a father sit there idly for the rest of your life doing nothing, or join a resistance against the oppression of barbaric murder of your people? This is just one of the thousands and thousands of stories. There are 50,000 pregnant women in the Gaza Strip according to the United Nations Population Fund, and more than 180 births taking place every day. The complete breakdown of the healthcare system, coupled with the lack of food, clean water, and proper sanitation, occupation means that 50,000 pregnant women and 68,000 breastfeeding mothers in Gaza are facing the risk of preeclampsia, anemia, bleeding, infections, and death. And even when they give birth, there isn't enough fuel to keep incubators running, which results in deaths of many newborns. And just a couple days ago, the Israeli occupation forces arrested and detained a pregnant woman as a hostage with no charges, which they do regularly. And speaking of hostages, you're about to hear a group of dehumanizing hypocrites that are here today asking for the release of their hostages without a mention of the over 10,000 Palestinian hostages being held, a majority of which are held without charge or due process. I'm standing here right now as a father and a husband to a pregnant wife, looking you directly in the eye.
Hey guys, Hamza here. Today I am with Professor Avi Shlam. He is an Israeli-British historian, and I have one question for you. Who is the one to blame for what is going on in Gaza right now? Israel or Hamas?
Israel is basically to blame for the war in Gaza. Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October, and this started the cycle of violence. But the Hamas attack did not happen in a vacuum. It happened in a context, and the context was 56 years of suffocating Israeli occupation of Gaza and of the West Bank. So the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories is the basic problem for this conflict. Hamas was being sidelined. Israel was signing peace accords with the Arab countries, the so-called Abraham Accords. And Israel completely ignored Hamas and exploited the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank as a subcontractor for Israeli society. Hamas is the only Palestinian group that stands for resistance to the Israeli occupation. And by launching the attack on Israel on the 7th of October, Hamas sent a powerful message that the Palestinians will not be sidelined, that the Palestinian resistance is not dead, that although the Palestinian Authority collaborates with Israel in the West Bank, Hamas will continue to lead the struggle for Palestinian freedom and independence.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Let it be written in the historical record that Israel butchered Gaza over and over as the civilized West supplied the weapons and shielded Israel in the press. The bullies pretended to be victims.
Dah langgar dah kejahatan senjata. Jadi untuk pengetahuan kau, Israel dah tangkap 15 rakyat Palestin di barat Laut Rafah tanpa sebab. Dalam perjanjian kejahatan senjata, mana boleh tangkap. Dan untuk pengetahuan kau juga, 2 rakyat Palestin pun terkorban dalam serangan drone IOF di timur bandar Gaza. Dan puak-puak Israeli berkata pula, dia kata nak tutup lintasan Rafah dan hanya akan membenarkan 300 truk je masuk setiap hari. Kalau kau tanya Netanyahu ke tu Netanyahu tu ada dekat dalam mahkamah Israel. Sebab apa? Dia tengah jalan kes penyelewengan wang, kes rasuah, pecah amanah, dan peguam dia juga minta supaya pembicaraan ni dipendekkan tanpa sebab. Tapi rakyat dia dah mengamuk dah tu kat luar tu. Dia cakap itu hanya alasan. Jadi gerak lu, apa-apa olah-olah. Peace, one love. Assalamualaikum. Bohong ni kau Peace.
Allow me now to show you 5 maps. The first one is historic Palestine. This is the territory over which the Palestinian people should have been able to exercise their right to self-determination. Instead, the General Assembly recommended the partition of Palestine, ignoring the will of our people as shown in the second map. With the Nakba that ensued, over 2/3 of our people were systematically and forcibly expelled by Israel, and 3/4 of Palestine became Israel, as shown in the third map. This was the start of the Nakba, the dispossession, the displacement and replacement of our people, the denial of rights and discrimination that continues to this very day. In 1967, Israel then occupied the remainder of Palestine, and from the first day of its occupation, started colonizing and annexing the land with the aim of making its occupation irreversible. It left us with a collection of disconnected Bantustans, preventing the independence of our state, as shown in map 4. Israel wanted the geography of Palestine, but not its demography. So it kept pushing our people out of their homes, out of their land. Here is the 5th map. It was displayed by Israel's Prime Minister to the General Assembly last September. He called this the new Middle East. There is no Palestine at all on this map. Only Israel, comprised of all the land from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. This shows you what the prolonged, continuous Israeli occupation of Palestine is intended to accomplish.
What the Greater Israel means?
It's a very important question for the countries of the Middle East and Cyprus. The center of Greater Israel is Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, and then goes out from there. It encompasses the Sinai Desert, a strip of land on the western side of the Nile River, all of Jordan, 2/3 of Syria, 2/3 of Iraq, all of Lebanon, a strip of land and even a small part of Turkey, at a minimum.
How do you know this?
Because the extreme right in Israel talks about it all the time. You see Israeli soldiers, they wear patches with a map, some of them, which show Greater Israel.
And Cyprus is not inside Greater Israel.
No, would include Cyprus. You know, if you go back and you study the early writings of Zionism, they talked about Cyprus. And the Zionists saw Cyprus as an important part of building Israel. And they would maintain a base here in Cyprus.
Or a plan B.
The plan B. And Cyprus is a perfect location because it's so close. And recently, the Israeli media has been saying the same thing about, how important Cyprus is to the Zionist vision of a greater Israel. And Netanyahu himself, he recently gave an interview. And a member of the far right asked him, are you committed to the idea of a greater Israel? And he said, absolutely.
זה הוויז'ן שלי, זה אחד הדברים שחלמתי עליהם, מפת הארץ המובטחת.
יפה.
בישראל השלמה. אתה מתחבר לחזון?
מאוד.
באמת?
מאוד.
The Israeli Prime Minister's office just confirmed they are going to resettle Gaza. They're going to occupy all of Gaza. We were right all along. It was never about self-defense. It was a colonial power doing conquest land grab. They murdered all those Palestinians on purpose. They leveled all of Gaza on purpose. They've now set up a concentration camp in the south, and they're saying that they're going to continue to just basically starve, kill, humiliate, oppress those Palestinians until they leave for a different country. They're going to take Gaza for themselves. They are genocidal maniacs, and they have now confirmed it. So I'm assuming that everyone who supported Israel is now going to say, oh, sorry, you guys were right all along. It turns out I was supporting a genocide, and I was supporting the murder of over 20,000 children so Israel could have more land. Disgusting. The Israeli Prime Minister's office just confirmed they are going to resettle Gaza. They're going to occupy all of Gaza. We were right all along. It was never about self-defense. It was a colonial power doing conquest land grab. They murdered all those...
We're in Yatta, and the Israeli army is currently raiding the house of a Palestinian who was released today, and he was actually kicked out of the country. He was released into Egypt, but the Israeli army still decided to raid the house of his family.
He's aiming a gun at me. Okay, now another dude is aiming a gun at me. Can you stop? I'm a journalist. Press. He's aiming right in the head. Fucking hell. Fuck. Jesus. Motherfucker. We're journalists. We're allowed to be here. We're allowed to film.
No picture.
We're international journalists. We're allowed to film. We're allowed to be here.
It's okay.
It's okay. We're just filming. Hey, you don't touch my phone. Don't touch me, please.
Yeah.
We're here. We are reporting on what's happening. We're recording what's happening. We're not disturbing you. We're not doing anything. We're just journalists.
No picture here. All right.
Why can't we be here?
No, because it's dangerous. Just step back to the.
You just threw a grenade at us.
Can you please walk to the where are the trees over there? Stand over there, everything will be fine, okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that is your guess.
That is a tear gas canister.
We were gathering here because of the release of our uncle Talib. Then suddenly the army came. They shot gas. They took my brother and two of the women. Just look what have they done. The bedroom, the closets. They don't want us to be happy at all.
Trump says America will take over Gaza. But this isn't policy. It's performance, genocide sold as diplomacy. His so-called peace plan promises a ceasefire, reconstruction, and a board of peace run by foreign powers and Trump himself. It claims no one will be forced to leave, then quietly adds a property rights unit for those who do. That's not protection, it's paperwork for ethnic cleansing. Displacement by design. Arab states have already rejected it. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, they won't bankroll their own destabilization. They've moved on from Washington's delusions. Trump isn't a nationalist. He's a salesman for transnational capital, tied to financiers and Gulf billions through Jared Kushner's fund. When he says America will own Gaza, he means he wants a Trump Tower on the Mediterranean. This isn't peace. It's profit. A real estate deal written in blood. Don't mistake rebranding for restraint. This isn't diplomacy. It's colonialism in a new suit.